What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This? This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we are finishing up our talks about the Moon Cleric and building one together, and this is going to be a fun one. I think you're really going to like what I've got for you. Very simple build, but very effective build, and that just goes to show you just how good this subclass is. And if you haven't already, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. As you can see, most people who watch this channel are not subscribed, so please, we're trying to get to 2,000 by the end of this year, and I think we can do that. We are currently at 1,250 or so. We passed that earlier this week, so thank you all for letting us hit that milestone, but let's get to 2,000, and I can do that if you guys click that bell so you're notified whenever new videos are uploaded, and of course, share the video with your friends. So on Tuesday, we talked about the Moon Cleric in depth, and if you haven't seen that video, that'll be up in the iCard above for you right there. And we ranked this thing very highly. In fact, it got almost our top rank. I mean, this thing is very strong. It does a lot of really cool things well. It does some things that no other class or subclass can do, namely concentrating on 2 spells at once, albeit from a short list. It's got some really cool stuff. So I'm trying to find ways in order to capitalize on what this subclass does well, and boy, you can capitalize on a lot of this stuff pretty easily, and it makes this an incredibly effective build. So without any further ado, let's jump right in. So starting off, as always, we're going to start with our race, and I wanted to pick something a little different for this one. Originally, I wanted to go with one of the Spelljammer races just because of the whole moon type of theming here, but I was like, well, they're probably not allowed at most tables yet, so let's go with something that's not Spelljammer, but it definitely would fit the theme very well. Instead, I have opted to go with the Harengon. The Harengon is such a fun race, and I don't think I've used it on the channel just yet because it's kind of strange. It's good on some other classes that I haven't really focused on yet on the channel, but here it kind of works, right? So the Harengon, of course, coming from the Wild Beyond the Witchlight book, and you are a rabbit person, gets a number of really cool benefits. Number one, you get +1 in 3 different stats, or +2 to one and +1 to the other. You're starting to get that with a lot of the new races, and I think that's fantastic, especially for people who are doing what I do as far as the modified standard array, or people who are doing point buy. Then you can just buy a 13 and 2 15s, and you're doing pretty well having 2 16s and a 14. That's pretty nice starting out at level 1. So I think that helps out everybody regardless of which type of method you're using at your table. I'm all about that. On top of that, though, you also get to add your proficiency bonus to your initiative rolls. That is one thing that I really wanted to do with this one. I want to be able to go as early as possible because we are going to be trying to set up more than 1 spell in this and try to maintain concentration on 2 at once. The earlier on that I can get these spells going, the better. And so I want to be early in initiative. I think that's really fantastic. We get proficiency in perception, so that's pretty good. Perception is a skill you will use a lot. We have help with our dexterity saving throws, which is really good because we're going to have not so great, I mean, they're not going to be terrible, but not so great dex saves, and those come up all the time, so this is going to be really handy to have. And we also get a rabbit hop. This was another big thing that drew me to this race, in we are working towards that 17th level feature of the Eclipse of Ill Omen, and everything that's within this aura gets a really, really terrible effect on them. All of the enemies do. And so being able to move around quickly is really, really effective. Being able to move that around and catch as many people within it is always going to be a good thing. It doesn't provoke opportunity attacks as well, so it gives us another really, really wanted mobility boost. And honestly, clerics really want that mobility, especially it being safe from opportunity attacks, because a lot of our stuff is touch, right? We want to cast Cure Wounds, namely, and we want to be right there to cast it. And being able to do that pretty safely, somewhat reliably, I think that's great. And so for all of those reasons, I think Harengon is actually a really, really great pick on this one. For our stats, we're going pretty vanilla here. We're going to go with a 17 in our wisdom, 15 in constitution, 13 in dexterity, 12 strength, 10 charisma, 8 intelligence. Of course, we use the modified standard array here on this channel. If you use point buy or regular standard array, rolled stats, some other method, whatever it is that you use, you will probably have to adjust these accordingly, but this is just what I use on the channel and at my tables. And with this, it also works out that we have 3 odd numbers, just like you could also do with your point buy. And we end up with an 18 wisdom, a 16 constitution, and a 14 dexterity after the 3+1s. I think that's great. If you're using a different method, you're just wanting to focus on those top 3. And I say focus very loosely when it comes to the dexterity. You just need a 14. 14 is the most you're ever going to need, just because that gives you your bonus to your AC from medium armor. We don't need anything higher than that, so don't worry about getting any higher. Pump your wisdom and constitution as high as they can go, though. For our equipment, nothing fancy here, really. We don't even need a weapon, because we are focused solely on spell casting on this build. A weapon's just going to get in your way. It's just going to cause your hands to be full, and I don't think we need it. It's just a waste. So medium armor, the best medium armor you can get, a shield and a holy symbol, and you're good to go. So yeah, it's pretty bare bones, but we really don't need a whole lot. Everything that we need comes with the features. So let's start taking some levels now. So at first level, we are starting off as a cleric. I know, shocker, we're starting off as cleric. But actually, originally this build was just 20 levels of cleric, and I ended up going back and tweaking it slightly to add a small bit of multi-classing, because I felt like it was one of the biggest boosts that I could have for minimum diversion from what it is that we want. We definitely, if nothing else, want the level 17 feature, the Eclipse of Ill Omen. We do not want to miss out on that. And I wanted preferably to get to level 18 in order to get our Channel Divinity 3 times per day, because we've got 2 Channel Divinities that are really good, plus we've got Turn Undead, plus we've got Harness Divine Power. We've got 4 things all competing, and 3 of them, Destroy Undead and Turn Undead are situational, but the other 3 are all great, and we're going to want to use all of them. And so having the most uses that we can per short rest is going to be what we're looking for. So I really didn't want to go more than 2 levels into anything else, and so that is what I've done. We're dipping 2 levels and we're done. So we're starting off with cleric though, and we get spell casting, and of course we get Call of Catha. Now with our Harengon race, we get help to dex saves. Now we also get help with wisdom saves because of this, and we can give this to our friends as well, which is fantastic. Wisdom saves come up quite a bit. It's basically dexterity and wisdom are your 2 most common. Constitution is up there, but those 2 are really common, and so we have bonuses to both, and I think that's absolutely amazing. It's going to make us really difficult to deal with on the saving throw side, and our AC is not bad, right? We've got medium armor, we've got a shield. We're not looking terrible. I mean, we're going to be pretty strong at level 1 actually, which is really nice. As far as spells go, for cantrips, I would skip guidance. We will pick that up a little bit later, so just leave that one alone for now. Sacred Flame, Spare the Dying, Thaumaturgy, Toll the Dead, things like that. Those are all really great cantrips, all fantastic ones that all clerics really would want. As far as first level spells, we get Fairy Fire and Silent Image for free, and there are a ton of other amazing options that we would want. Bless, Cure Wounds, Guiding Bolt makes a lot of sense. Healing Word, Sanctuary, and Shield of Faith are also amazing options as well. At level 2, we are a Cleric too, and we get our Channel Divinity, and namely we get our Blessing of the Full Moon. This allows us to give advantage to one of our friends whenever an ally is within 5 feet of an enemy, and this is really strong, especially when you give this to a rogue or to a paladin. The rogue, you're guaranteeing sneak attack, but the rogue already had sneak attack if something was already within 5 feet of it, but they didn't necessarily have advantage, so you'd hate for your rogue to miss, right? Plus, that gives them a better chance of critting. Same thing with giving it to a paladin. They have a better chance to crit, and I think that's really nice. As far as using it on yourself, I don't think it's worth it. We don't have a ton of things that we can use that require an attack roll, so it's not really worth our time using it on ourselves, but give it to your fighter, give it to your rogue, give it to your paladin, and just let them go nuts for now. At Cleric 3, we get 2nd level spells, and we get Invisibility and Moonbeam for free. I think Moonbeam is a pretty good use of your bonus action, and it will get even better as we go. For now, though, I probably would stick with Spiritual Weapon just because it is not concentration. And the one thing that's interesting is once we get to level 6, and I'm trying not to get too ahead of myself here, but once we get to level 6, we can concentrate on 2 of the spells on this list, on the short list, and still have Spiritual Weapon going at the same time, which I think is kind of insane. We can't do anything with it necessarily as long as we are doing something else with our bonus action, but we could be concentrating on 2 spells and do Spiritual Weapon all in one turn. I think that's pretty insane just because it's not concentration. So yeah, definitely keep that in the back of your head. Hold Person is also great, and Lesser Restoration is also a must-have for any cleric. At Cleric 4, we get our first ASI or feat, and there is a must-take feat on this build, and I'm taking it now. It's Warcaster. Warcaster is one that you absolutely cannot leave home without. Now you might be thinking, well, Dapper, you don't need it. Your hands aren't full, so you don't need the whole perform somatic components if your hands are full. You're right, that part is going to be ignored. However, the other parts of it are nice. Number 1, opportunity attacks can now be made with spells. We're not carrying a weapon, and we're not going to. So this allows us to actually make opportunity attacks with something in our hand, which is great. So that's fantastic. The other thing is advantage on concentration checks. We definitely need this looking ahead in 2 levels when we are going to have disadvantage on concentration checks most of the time. This will counterbalance that. So this is an absolutely necessary bring for this build. At Cleric 5, we have Destroy Undead at CR 1/2, and that's all right. I think it's just a little situational. Some campaigns and some settings you'll use this constantly, and there are others where you will not use this ever, and so it is what it is. But we also get 3rd level spells, and we pick up Hypnotic Pattern and Major Image. Hypnotic Pattern is a huge contender for one of our main concentration spells because of just how great it is of incapacitating an enemy. Now, one thing I want to talk about with Hypnotic Pattern, I love the spell Hypnotic Pattern. However, it just says that you incapacitate your enemies. It doesn't say anything about going further than that. And I really wish that the incapacitated status were better, because with this ability, you could cast Hypnotic Pattern the first turn, get a bunch of enemies to fail it, and then after that, go ahead and use your Channel Divinity next level and go ahead and cast Fairy Fire. If that gave disadvantage or an automatic failure, that would have been so nice, right? Just because they can't reasonably move because they are incapacitated. So why is it that we can cast Fairy Fire and they still have a chance to get out of it? I think that's kind of rough, and I really wish that it didn't work that way, but rules is written. You don't get any bonus to it just because they're incapacitated. We also get Mass Healing Word, Revivify, and Spirit Guardians are all really good options. Spirit Guardians is a little lesser on the list just because our concentration will probably be taken up by our actual domain spells, but it's still a nice spell to have if you don't have any more uses of your Channel Divinity or you just want to get people off of you. At Cleric 6, we get, of course, Mind of Two Moons, and now we can concentrate on 2 spells at once. That's so good, right? And so I want to talk about what are good strategies here with this ability. We don't really get a ton of amazing ones after this. We get greater invisibility, which is nice, right? And we could, of course, upcast any of these spells. There's no restriction on what level you cast these spells at, which I think is cool. But I think Hypnotic Pattern is definitely one of them, no matter what. Hypnotic Pattern is going to take people out of the fight. And you can take this little group of people, take them out of the fight, and then use any of your other spells, namely Moonbeam or Fairy Fire, and hit another group or one singular enemy, however it happens to work out. So you are being endlessly useful as far as battlefield control, taking out a certain sect of enemies and then making it a lot easier to kill a different part of the battlefield. and it's just free, right? And then if you were to have to take damage, then you do have advantage to outweigh the disadvantage that you have on your concentration checks. It's more than worth it, especially since we have it. And now we also get a second use of Channel Divinity just in time. So level 7, we decide that we are looking elsewhere for our power, at least temporarily. But we're not going to look that far from where we were already looking before, right? We've been looking at the sky for a long time, and we've been staring at the moon specifically. But if we would have just looked slightly to the left or right, we would notice something else about nature, and that is what we are going to focus on going forward these next couple of levels. And we're going to take a couple levels of druid. Now, one thing to keep in mind, of course, that druids will not wear metal armor. Of course, talk to your DM about this. If your druid wants to or can, great, you don't have to worry about it. If not, then I would talk to your DM about possibly homebrewing a way to make armor out of something that you have fought, so like an Umber Hulk or a worm or something that has naturally heavy armor, just like some kind of plate armor. Even dragon scales can work, and then either make them yourself or have your artificer friend do it, or have an artisan in town make you something like that, in order to get around that metal restriction. And same thing with your shield. Your shield does need to be completely made of wood, but that can be something you can have focused on at the very beginning of character creation, and so you're not running into that problem now. But Druid gives us quite a bit of cool stuff. At level 1, you get Druidic, which is basically Thieves' Cant for druids, so you have a secret language that only druids can understand, which is cool. And then on top of that, we of course get our spells. And we get a few interesting ones. I think Druidcraft is a must bring. And then Thorn Whip is also a really interesting option. Being able to pull people closer to you, especially if you have Spirit Guardians up. Once you have your Eclipse of Ill Omen, you make it a lot harder for them to get out of that eclipse. So you pull them a little closer to you, and then they've got to run farther to get away from you. I think that's great. For first level spells, Absorb Elements is always a fantastic defensive option, and it allows you to deal a little bit of extra damage later. We're not so focused on that. We're more focused on reducing damage taken. That's more so what we're looking at here. Goodberry and Charm Person are also really great options on top of that. At Druid 2, though, is where we get the reason that we're here, and we are going, of course, with the Stars Druid. I had a lot of people asking me last week when I did the Blood Cleric, that'll be up in the icon above right there, why I didn't do the Stars Druid, and it's because I was planning on doing the Stars Druid this week, and I didn't want to do 2 Stars Druid builds in a row. Stars Druid is just so nice to take 2 levels in. It's really hard to limit how many that I take because it's so strong. But it's just so perfect here. We need help with our concentration checks as much as possible, and this one is the way to go. So we get, of course, Wild Shape here, which is one thing that we are going to be using hardly ever for its main intended purpose. But you can turn into small animals of CR 1/4 or lower, as long as they can't fly or swim. So this can be used for recon. This can be used for hiding in someone's pocket. This can be used for several different things. So it's very versatile. You get 2 per day. So that's a little limiting, unfortunately, but we're not going to really use it to turn into an animal. Instead, we're going to take our starry form, and our starry form allows us to take 1 of 3 constellation forms, and we're going to focus, of course, on the dragon. The other 2 are not bad by any means. One of them helps with your healing, and the other gives you another little attack that you can do. But we're not going to focus on those. We're focusing on the dragon form, because it means that when we are making a concentration check, and actually certain checks as well, certain ability checks as well, you can't roll below a 10. That's amazing, right? So if you take less than 20 damage, you're automatically passing no matter what. And that's if you have a +0 to your constitution. We have a +3 currently. So we're ahead by quite a bit. If you take less than 20 damage, you can't lose concentration. 1, because you did have disadvantage, but you have advantage. Even if you did have disadvantage, you could still bring that up, which I think is really, really nice. I still want Warcaster though. I still think Warcaster is great, especially for the cantrips on a opportunity attack, but technically you could go without it. but that's just me. I'd rather still have a better chance of rolling higher than that for as we scale and are going to be taking more damage in one go. But that's just me. So I still think it's worth it. We also get our starry map, and this is how we pick up our guidance and guiding bolt here as well. So we can cast guiding bolt without using a spell slot, which is fantastic. It's a great spell. I love using it. And now that we have that in our pocket, we're done with Druid and we're back to Cleric the whole way. So at Cleric 7, we don't get any features, but we get 4th level spells. We get greater invisibility and hallucinatory terrain. Hallucinatory terrain is all right, I guess, but greater invisibility is nice. Banishment is also great. And so those are the 2 spells that I would really focus on. Honestly, I would take a lot more of your lower level spells because I think that they're just a lot more useful to you in this situation. Then at Cleric 8, we get another ASI or feat. I'm going to go ahead and just max out our wisdom just to get our saving throws as good as possible, especially since we're going to be casting a lot of hypnotic patterns and fairy fires. I want that saving throw to be as high of a DC as we possibly can go, and here we are maxed out. We also get Destroy Undead upgraded to a CR1, and we get Empowered Cantrips. So this is another reason why I really want Warcaster, is we're now dealing extra damage here. We're dealing 5 extra damage whenever we cast a cantrip, which we can reliably just cast Toll the Dead over and over once we have our 2 spells up, and that saves our slots, and it's going to do decent damage, right? Our cantrips are scaling with us as we go. You know, we're level 10 right now, so it's going to scale again next level, and Toll the Dead does a lot of damage, honestly, for a cantrip. So I think that's really fantastic to go ahead and get this here. At Cleric 9, level 11 overall, we get 5th level spells. We get Dream and Pass Wall. Pass Wall is one of those that I never think to take, like, ever, because I'm like, how often am I going to use this? But it's also one of those that you get in a problematic dungeon and you don't have this, and you are absolutely screwed. And Pass Wall would just solve all of your problems. So yeah, it's really good having this as an automatically prepared spell. I really like it, actually. Greater Restoration is another must. Mass Cure Wounds and Raise Dead, of course, as always. At Cleric 10, we get Divine Intervention, and so we can call upon the moon in order to grant us an effect. It's a little vague on what it can and cannot do, but I'm not a huge fan of it just because it works so little. But I know that that's a differing opinion. And of course, if you haven't checked out my Cleric guide on all things Cleric, that'll be up in the icon above for you to check out right there as well. At Cleric 11, we get our Destroy Undead upgraded to a CR2, and we also get 6th level spells. Harm, Heal, and Sunbeam are all really, really fantastic brings here. At Cleric 12, we get an ASI or a feat, and I'm just going to go ahead and bump Constitution to 18. I don't need any more feats here, so I'm good just bumping stats the rest of the way. At Cleric 13, we get no features, but we get 7th level spells, and Firestorm and Resurrection are really, really great brings. There are, of course, other nice options, but those are the 2 that I personally like the most. At Cleric 14, we get our Destroy Undead upgraded to a CR3. At Cleric 15, we get no features, but we do get 8th level spells, and Sunburst is right there, right? I think that's a really, really fun spell. And we do, of course, have a 9th level spell slot here because we did go into Druid, which is another full caster. So you can, of course, upcast any of these spells that you would like. At Cleric 16, we get another ASI or feat, and we're just going to max out our Constitution. And I'll talk about some honorable mentions here at the very end, because I'm sure there's another idea that some of you probably have had here. Cleric 17, Destroy Undead, of course, goes to a CR4, and we get Eclipse of Ill Omen. Finally, our other subclass feature that it has taken us a long time to get, but this Eclipse is insane. It makes our saving throws a lot easier to stick. Of course, we want those to stick, and we've got a ton of amazing spells, again, namely Hypnotic Pattern and Fairy Fire, that really, really want to go. And that way we aren't wasting our concentration on it. And this just makes it so much easier. So I think it's great. And another synergy that I was thinking of is if you have somebody who really, really likes the spell Shadow Blade, especially something like a Blade Singer that runs Shadow Blade. There are a lot of others that really like that spell. But it's constant dim light, which gives advantage when you're using that spell. and that's a 60-foot range around you, which is huge. So I think that's really cool. So if you've got a high level wizard that's doing this stuff, or high level anybody else that's using that spell, you can kind of make them go nuts if they don't have a way of getting reliable advantage already. And then of course at Cleric 18 we get our third use of Channel Divinity per rest. So that is our build for today. Very simple, but it didn't need to be complicated because the subclass was already really good, so didn't need a whole lot of bells and whistles. And I think that's great. I think that's going to make this a really easy to play subclass while still being very, very strong. As far as honorable mentions go, I don't have a lot because honestly, 20 levels of this is probably your strongest, and then I think 2 levels of stars is your second strongest. As far as races though, I really wanted the Auto Gnome from Spelljammer. The Auto Gnome is really cool because it gives you a little bit of extra healing on the fly. And of course, staying up is going to be your big thing, right? You may not lose concentration, but if you get knocked unconscious, then, you know, who cares? You're going to drop it no matter what. So being able to heal on the fly is nice. And there are a lot of really other great things. So once Spelljammer is legal, and if you can use that at your table, I think try out Auto Gnome with this one. I think it's going to be a really fantastic subclass. And also the Satyr is nice too. Just having advantage against spells is really nice. And I know a lot of other races get that as well. But the Satyr is just fun, right? It's just awesome. As far as our feats go, I would probably go with Metamagic Adept for Quickened spell. That way you can get a lot of use out of your turns here. So if you cast one of your main spells, of course you can't cast something like Spiritual Weapon on your bonus action. But if you were to cast, say, I don't know, Fairy Fire or Hypnotic Pattern as a bonus action, then you could turn around and Toll the Dead after that, which is really, really cool. Of course, they don't necessarily combo with each other, but it's letting you get enough done. It's letting you get a lot more done in one turn, and I think that's really, really nice. And then also Resilient Constitution. Resilient is one that I really wanted to take in order to help our concentration checks even more. And technically, if you wanted to end with a 19 in Constitution with the Resilient feat, I wouldn't blame you, because technically it would be a bigger bonus. And I mean, that's a +6 bonus. So, I mean, that's really not bad at all. And that's in addition to the +4. So you have a +10 just from that right there. And you can't roll less than a 10, so you have a minimum of a 20 to your concentration checks, which is great. So you have to take more than 40 damage in one go in order to be able to have your concentration broken, and that's just a chance. You could roll higher. So I think that's really strong as well. Definitely one to consider. And I almost went with that, but I also really like having the extra HP from having 20 Constitution. As far as other classes go, 2 levels of fighter is really the only other dip that I would consider. Being able to have Constitution saving throw proficiency right there would be nice. And having heavier armor might be nice as well. The bigger thing though would be having the ability to cast 2 of your spells in the same turn. That would be nice. So you could action surge and cast both Hypnotic Pattern and Fairy Fire in one turn. That could be really cool. And so I could definitely see a case to be made there. But that also would slow down your spell progression, and I don't like that. And I think having your spells coming online when they're supposed to is more worth it, in my opinion. So I think the way that we went with it is probably one of, if not the most optimized ways to do it. So that is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Of course, next week we are moving on to the Druid, and we are building a coffee lock, and I am looking forward to that. So if you haven't already, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time, stay safe out there, stay healthy, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.